Welcome to Conversations with. I am I.C. Bailey, and we're about to do this today. All right. There's nothing better than a little bit of Public Enemy. Let's get our logo in the background there. Ion. Nothing better. So what we're doing is we're pressing mute.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Right. So nothing better than a little bit of Public Enemy to get us rolling. Fight the Power. 1989, The Number, Another Summer. You know, and what is it now? 2019? 2019, is that the year, Ion?
Yes, it is.
That's right. So what does that make it? 30 years since 1989?
Yep.
Right. And I was, 1989, how old was I? Born in 68. 19 years old. So my mindset in those days was, why are these things happening? What's going on with my life? Why am I experiencing these things that minimize, marginalize, damage, and hurt me? Why is this happening to me? And I knew, because 3 years prior to that, actually 6 years prior to that, I was introduced, living in a sheltered community, removed from my mother, from the black community altogether, in childcare. I was finally introduced to Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr., and our shining prince, Malcolm X. So today we're going to talk a little bit about Dr. King and his legacy. We're going to talk about our version. I didn't know a person could have a version, but we're going to talk about our perception, our vision of who Dr. King was. And that's important to know. Because what you see, in order to sell trucks, pizza, McDonald's French fries, or whatever they're selling them out to right now, we see this whitewashed version of Dr. King. It's all about peace and love and unity, man. Peace and love and unity. Dr. King was about love. And he wouldn't have approved what you're saying, Black Lives Matter. It's all about peace and unity now. Right? So we hear this version of Dr. King. Right? We even hear people say things like, you know, Malcolm, man, I saw the movie, and I just love what Malcolm stood for. Right? And even back then, we knew Malcolm was on point. In fact, we loved Dr. King and Brother Malcolm. We loved them. We loved Brother Malcolm. We loved the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. I'm sure they had other words for him at that time. So what they're selling us is this brand of revisionist, his story. We know how they felt. In fact, there's some polling that's acceptable or that's out there for us that we can rest on. They didn't love these men, they hated them. See, almost every single national poll overwhelmingly felt dissatisfaction with the efforts of Dr. Martin Luther King. They disliked him, and he would get thousands upon thousands of hate letters and hate mail every week, threatening him and his children and his wife and his family and his church and his congregation. And we know that as a direct result of Dr. King's influence, there were churches bombed, burning crosses lit on people's fire, on lawns. There was lynchings, savage beatings, and we're just fortuitous enough, lucky enough, that in one of his events, one of his actions, that it get caught on film in that bridge coming over in Selma, Alabama. And we got to see firsthand, you got to see firsthand the savage brutality that black people face on an ongoing basis. This measured, calm, gentle, loving, brilliant man, just walking with a group of people, was savagely beating and scores of others with him. That made the white masses uncomfortable. The savage barbarism of this event woke people up to what was happening. And when I mean woke up, because let's look at this thing about being woke. I'm in my house and I'm falling asleep. I know generally the things that are going on there, whether there's children over, there's people coming in and out. I generally know who's in my house, what's going on, how my house operates. So it's not a surprise to me when I slumber and fall asleep in my comfort, anything that happens when I wake up. Well, there might be some momentary surprise, but it falls within a range of stuff that I know is going to happen or has happened. And as this has been the course of events for the last 400 years, I'm telling you, it was no surprise to people. They weren't woke up. What they were is embarrassed and uncomfortable in their own living rooms. And so it became thrust. And so they had a choice, because the only thing that causes change, and I want you to start owning this. I'm going to tell you some absolutes. I don't like blanket statements, man. Well, I'm going to tell you some blanket statements. The only time change occurs is when there is discomfort. So the white mass power culture in North America received full throttle discomfort. Some people ran from it. Some people needed to change the script. Troublemakers, well, what did they expect? They needed to change the concept of what was just, well, they shouldn't have been marching across that bridge, although they had some legal permission to do such. Making black people and white people the dissidents, the race traitors, you're a race traitor, making the black people and the race traitors guilty of something, deserving of any treatment that they get. But most people, for the first time, across North America, across the world, had to sit, because they were in their living room watching CBS, I think it was on. They had to sit in a thing called radical discomfort, radical acceptance of their own discomfort. They had to radically accept, because they're in their living room, what can they do? They can't run away. People were addicted to TV in those days. Right? They still are, obviously. So they sat and they watched, because they'd never seen anything like this before. Right? They'd seen things about the Vietnam War, them hippies, but they'd never seen in mass black people being treated the way that they were. Right? It's never happened before. Oh, they all knew about slavery. They all knew about Jim Crow. They all knew, they'd go through every single day and see the signs on the wall that says whites only and Negro entrance and Negroes get back behind there. That's your entrance back there. They knew these things. But it was never forced upon them until on, and I apologize, here's some research for folks out there, which day it was on. Maybe it was a Sunday evening when they got their news, full force, right after. Bellies are full, they're sitting there, well, Becky? Yes, Chad? That was a great meal we just had. Let's sit back and watch some telly. And bam, right in their face, what they're seeing are black people being mistreated. And alongside of them, some white people. And I always thought, if it was just pure black people being massacred, being slaughtered, I always thought, some people might have been uncomfortable. But it's really the white people who were getting beat up next to them that made them think, well, because they couldn't, it was such a leap that they couldn't say, well, they could. I mean, they wouldn't, today's government. They couldn't say, look at those white people getting beat up, but those black people, they're getting beat up too, but they deserve it. Like it would have been a leap because some of them were marching hand in hand. This is the brilliance of Dr. King. So let's enter that a little bit, because I'm going to give you a potpourri of quotes from people, and what I want to do is I'm going to give you a quote from somebody, and I want you to tell me who said it. Now, I told you what the theme is, but I still bet that you'll get this wrong because it's not who you think it is. So this is about Dr. King, Malcolm. We're going to go over Jordan Peele a little bit, and then I'm going to rant and rave and go on like an angry black man because that's what I did. But I'm going to give you a quote right now. I'm going to give you a couple of quotes, and I just want you to guess. You tell me who this is. I bet you get it wrong. The theme is Dr. King, but I still think you're going to get this wrong because it's going to surprise you who actually said this. So the question is not whether we will be extremists or extremists, but what kind of extremists we will be. And he goes on to say, I just blew it, will we be extremists for the preservation of injustice or the extension of justice? The question is not, I repeat, whether we will be extremists, but what kind of extremists we will be. And I'm going to talk about this a little, and if you want to enter into the screen here, get active, get awake. There's 9 of you on there, so I want to see some action. Tell me who said that. In the meantime, I'm going to expand upon it. And so what it's telling us, it's not a question whether we're going to be extreme in what we do. And what does that mean, extreme? That just means when I say I'm an extremist, that means that I'm committed to giving what I have, all the resources, my voice, my body, my mind, my money, my attention, my family, my sacrifices, the things that I'll give in my life, that I'm prepared to give them towards something. That they'll be devoted to a singular task. Right? That's being extremist. Giving what you have to the thing that's important to you. It's not about wearing a beret or a t-shirt with rebels on it, or a Malcolm X t-shirt, or Martin Luther King t-shirt, or wearing one of those pink hats, or any of that. Right? It's about giving what you have and everything in full essence towards something. So who said that? Who said that? Any guesses? Okay. I'm not going to tell you because I've not seen any work being done, so I'm not going to tell you. I'll suspend that answer for you. Let me give you another quote. We must be concerned not merely about who murdered them, speaking of innocent black people, but about the system the way of life, the philosophy which produced the murderers. And we're not talking about people who are on death row. We're not talking about the daily average criminal here. What if I told you that there's no difference between the system and those murderers? Because if the system is producing on an ongoing basis a set of people who are minimizing the lives, who are destroying the lives of black people, then isn't the system a murder? Now, Erica got it right. Ali got it right. Thank you, Erica, very much. Martin Luther King, very wise sister. Thank you for that lesson. Great. So the first quote was Martin Luther King. Go figure, right? But that's not the Martin that they show you in the Chevy truck commercial. That's not the Martin that you see when the dude says, yeah, man, I'm all about love, peace, and unity, man. That's not the Martin we hear about. That's not the Martin that we hear about when we tell them something, right, that makes them uncomfortable. When we talk about how the education system commonly produces a prison to pipeline situation for black youth, and we march about it, we talk about it, we meet, we wear shirts that say Black Lives Matter, we raise our fists and say no more, they want to use the specter of this fake Martin Luther King in order to silence us, right? They want to use his voice as a weapon to keep our mouth closed because they can't lynch us as much anymore. They don't know Dr. King. They never did. They don't like Dr. King. They never did. Right? And you're going to hear this all the time. I bet you if you ask 10 white people today, or 100 white people, depending on where you are, that they like Dr. King, you're going to probably get 99%, 95%, as long as you're not at a mega rally. You're going to get 99% to say, yeah, yes, Dr. King was wonderful. I love Dr. King. You know. But if you transported those people back in time, that's impossible, but it's not. And I'm going to tell you how it's not. They would say, well, I think he's moving too quickly. We need our time. Slavery wasn't too long ago, and we need time to adjust to these things. That's what they'd say to us. When they're around each other, guess what they would say? N-word, 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 N-word. They're too uppity, blah, 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 blah. You've heard it before. But I always know, because there's three words that people say. And when they say those three words, I always know how they feel about Dr. King. Always. Do you know what those three words are? When they see the strife, when they see Trayvon Martin, Sandra Bland, Eric Garner, right? When they Philando Castile, when they see the rising tide, an openness of white supremacists and people who have disdain for black people and POC, and then see our response, they usually say three things. And that tells me where they are. You got it, Emily. Bam. You've learned here, right? You've learned here. All lives matter. So I know where you are with Dr. King when you talk about all lives matter. I'm not going to go into that because we know that's just an opposition to the principles that Dr. King and others brought to the table. Now, Fleener writes, hey, little sis, how you doing? White supremacy, yes, they killed him and made him a martyr for them. Right. That's a really interesting point that Fleener brings up, because there's a saying that history, what's the saying? History is made by the winners, right? Yeah. And so what they've done is they killed Dr. King, and we already know we talked a little bit about this before. We know they killed Dr. King. We know COINTELPRO, which is the counterintelligence program by the FBI, hired and led by J. Edgar Hoover, who was the director of the FBI, used all of their resources to spy on Dr. King. We know that James Earl Ray, who escaped from prison, who was, I think, number 5 or 6 on FBI's most wanted list, and was able to stalk the most surveilled man in the world without any help whatsoever. I mean, this person he was an undercover agent that went to jail they were looking for. He was just some good old boy that for some reason was able to elude the entire FBI and then still hang around and surveil and stalk the most surveilled man in North America. So they killed him, and then being smart, extending with Nixon's Southern strategy, I'm giving you homework, right? Then made him a martyr. And I always find that, I always get, look, some good old boy, I see him, and he says the N-word, I get angry. And usually there's other people around because white people don't like to look like they're not doing the good thing. I'm a good person. So people deal with them. And people, I'm 6'3", big black guy, dreadlocks flowing, rah, rah, rah. It doesn't happen as much as it used to. But what really angers me is when I'm talking about systemic change. When I'm talking about specific behaviors that we know lead to a low standard of living or a gap in the standard of living between white people and black people. When I'm talking about those things, and I'm getting very specific, and demonstrable racist behaviors or oppressive behaviors, that's when I usually hear, well, you know, you're so full of hate, Dr. King wouldn't approve. And that stinks to me. It's such a stench that I just want to get up and just evacuate wherever the source of that stench is coming from. Right? So when a person says to me that's not what Dr. King stood for, my question always to them is, okay, so what did Dr. King stand for? Tell me. Now, before you tell me, I want you to exclude the I have a dream speech. Pretend you never heard it before. Tell me, what are some of Dr. King's words? What are some of his quotes? What are some of his appearances? Tell me where you've learned your extensive knowledge about Dr. King. In fact, explain to me, break down his, if you will, diaphragma of his wisdom, if that's even a word. So, you know, just break me down a diaphragma of his teachings. Yes, I'll break you down the diaphragm of his teachings. Well, he wasn't about, and they can't really isolate when he said all this stuff about peace and love. And, you know, sometimes he said he's a pastor, so he's going to say things about love and hate. Right? He was more concerned at those points in time about, he knew the effect that resentment and anger would have on the lives of black people and their internal relationships. But he was pretty clear about the burden that he placed on white people. So that last quote about we must be concerned not merely about who murdered them, but the system, the way of life, the philosophy that produced the murderers. Right? So when we look at Dr. King, we see other things that he said too as well. And I'm focusing on his quotes because this is an intro for you. This is intro to Dr. King. Right? We're not going to go deeply into the body of his work because you're not prepared for it as a mass culture. You're just simply not. But he also said, freedom is never voluntarily given by the oppressor. It must be demanded by the oppressed. Right? So this idea that you're in a dialogue and someone says, well, this Black Lives Matter, folks, or, changes in the system, or, the police, there should be changes made, but that's not the way to go about it. You don't have any platform. You don't have any ground. You don't have any moral authority to be able to oppose anything that we do. We're not really asking you. We're demanding you do that. We're demanding that you make sure that the police can investigate themselves and that there be civilian oversight. We demand that you take armed police out of our schools. We demand that you dismantle the schoolyard to prison pipeline. We demand that you have equal wages for black women who are doing the same work as others. So the things we say to you, we're not asking you, we're making demands. And yeah, I'm uppity as fuck. Right? I'm uppity. Because we can agree to disagree on many things, but as Baldwin said, James Baldwin said, when it comes to my human rights, you don't have any room to stand. Right? Let's look at some of his other quotes, because I think we need to sit in them for a second. Right? We need to sit in an understanding of what we're doing both individually and as a culture. He wrote, "A nation that continues year after year to spend more money on military defense than on programs of social uplift is approaching spiritual doom." And we see that. We're going to spend more money on the wall that we don't need than we are on the lives of black children. We're going to spend more money on attack helicopters than we are on the water in Flint, Michigan. Right? We're going to spend more money on flights to Milagro. What's that? Where's Trump do his golf thing? Milagro?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know.
Right? You know,
I don't watch the news, man.
my production assistant. Come on, do some research for me. Anyways, we're going to spend more money on Trump going 177 times to play golf in his first term than we are on federal police reform. All right? So let's scroll up. Aaron writes, Southern strategy to turn Dems via Republic. Riots are the language of the unheard. Sasha writes. So what we see is a system of things, because you have to spend more money on the guard dogs, the fists of oppression, which is the military, which includes the police, the paramilitary, the Coast Guard, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, all that stuff. Right? We're going to spend more money on that because that cements our ability to be able to hold power and control over people, and less on uplifting the people that we've oppressed. Now, Fleer writes, Jesse Williams said, now what we've been doing is looking at the data, and we know that police somehow manage to desiccate, disarm, and not kill white people every day. So and that's a great point. They spend a lot of money in making sure that there's oversight, care, and control around white citizens, but they spend very little on doing the same in black communities. Right? So how does this happen? Because most white people that I speak to, including some of the maggots, maghats, if I'd said to them, shouldn't we make sure that black people are treated fairly by the police? I've yet to see one really say no to that. They'll say, yeah, because I know a couple of Trump supporters. And they'll say, yes, yes, we agree 100%. But where this breaks down, and this is a really interesting thing, is it's easy to say, yes, I dream of a universe where the children of the world can play in fields of daisies and flowers and love each other and hold each other tightly and love each other and be able to have dinner with each other and enjoy each other's company. I dream of that day. And like Dr. King said, I dream of the day when a person we judge by their character and not the color of their skin. See? I quoted Dr. King. I know all about him. But when it comes down to it, change isn't about saying or doing stuff that sounds nice. It's about discomfort. It's about giving up some of the things that you know to be true or hope to be true, some of the things that you're comfortable with, some of the things that you've come accustomed to. And sitting, what did I start this off talking about? Radical discomfort. Radical acceptance of discomfort. You have to be able to sit in radical acceptance of discomfort as a white person. And I seldomly see that. And Dr. King knew this, and we're going to get to some place here. He wrote, and we're gonna read a whole passage from this, but I believe one of his crowning piece of work is the letter from a Birmingham jail. This is where he just became frustrated, disenchanted with, not with his work, not with black people, but with the course of the white people that he was involved with. Now, Dr. King didn't spend huge, massive amounts of time in close concert with the KKK. You'd see them, you know, there's times when some of the law enforcement who were basically KKK with badges and guns would do some stuff, right? They would show up at one's events. Sometimes they'd beat them up. There's times when they arrested them. So most of his contact with white people were about white liberals. So he knew how to deal with racists. And, you know, in some of our discussion groups, they're easy. We know their argument. We've had this discussion many, many, many times, right? There's always this ongoing frustration with them. But I know where they're at. I know exactly what they're going to say before they can say it, and I can actually predict it. And so can all of we, because we've had these conversations thousands of times. But what takes up my mental energy, what frustrates me, what disarms me, what destroys our communities and the work we're doing to empower ourselves isn't necessarily always these overt racists, but rather the white people that work next to us, or the white passing POC, right? Now, in this group, it's very clear on the pinned post, on the description of the group, that we're dealing, that this group, and we're linked to others, and we've created others, we're close in a familial relationship with other marginalized groups as well, but in conversations with white people, while we will talk about racism, and we will talk about other people's oppression, we primarily talk about anti-black racism. I'm a black man. I started some of this stuff simply because I experienced racism, and I needed to talk about it. And then I found other people did too. Most of these groups and most of the work that we're doing in these groups, there's strong black leadership from black women, right? Someone actually came to me, someone close to us, came to me in the last week and actually suggested that I'm talking too much about black stuff. No joke. And that we're were not the most oppressed group in North America, Oppression Olympics. Wasn't about, and that person wasn't even part of a group that they wanted included. Right? They were talking about indigenous people. Black people are indigenous. Right? We are indigenous people. Specifically, she was really talking about native indigenous people who we have amazing relationship with because we're so infused in our stuff. And this person actually suggested that we sit in silence. And maybe that's not fair because she didn't say silence. But what she said and how it felt were two different things, impact versus intent. What it felt like she was telling the founder of a group that deals with racism because of the trauma and abuse that he's experienced, and a group of people managed by 30 black women, some black men too as well, that they shouldn't talk about their own oppression. And then made themselves a victim when they didn't get their own way or when they were challenged. You're condescending. So these are the type of things that Dr. King experienced. And he says, over the past few years, I've been gravely disappointed with the white moderate. I have almost reached the regrettable conclusion that the Negro's great stumbling block in his stride towards freedom is not the white citizen's counselor or the Ku Klux Klanner, but the white moderates. We call them white liberals now, right? Who is more devoted to order than to justice, who prefers a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, Ian. That's not the way I would have necessarily handled it. Ian, you're a little bit too excited. You seem angry. Black Lives Matter. Why are they so angry? Tone policing. But they prefer a negative peace, which is indifference, which is the absence of tension, which is not being able to sit in radical acceptance of discomfort, to a positive peace, which is the presence of justice. All right. Those are the quotes from Dr. King. And I was going to read a little bit more to you from his letter from a Birmingham jail because it's one of the greatest letters, the pieces of writing I've ever read in my life. He goes on to say in this, after that quote, says all the stuff about preferring a positive peace. And this was said to me this week. I agree with you in the goal you seek, but I cannot agree with your methods of direct action. Right? And that's about their own conflict. That's about, you said something. Maybe it's the fierceness in your eyes. Maybe it's your beard. Maybe it's your hoodie, right? Maybe it's the way you look, right? Maybe it's the way you look, right? Maybe it's all that. Maybe it's, I was scared for my life. Brother, yeah! He looked like he could cause some damage and I was scared. Or maybe it's just the word black. But there seems to be an extreme, almost an extremist view on the black image that we do not have value and we should be tossed aside. Now, I'm going to go back just a little bit. Ali writes, do you think that he really began to be considered radical extremist and a threat when he began to demand economic justice and to express an anti-militarism, particularly around the Vietnam War? Well, look, And then Sasha writes, it must be frankly said, are not putting in a similar mass effort to re-educate themselves, white people, out of their radical ignorance. Right? And so the economic variables, and this is interesting how we can tie Malcolm in this, because Malcolm very much believed that integration, the end of segregation, that integration, not the end of segregation, pardon me, was a fool's errand. And not because of the goals that it promised to bring, but rather because he didn't think that America or North America was capable of delivering on those promises. And so what you did see Dr. King do is spend a lot of time on bolstering black-owned business and black communities and black networks. And you see Malcolm do the same thing too as well, you know, with the Nation of Islam. And so, you know, we see Dr. King not really, he was a pastor. He didn't want to see people suffer. He knew what war was about. It was about children and women being raped as a tool of war, and women being and children being killed and starved. He knew what that was, and he wasn't for it. He definitely wasn't for black lives being lost at a disproportionate rate to their enlistment. Right? So yeah, I don't think he was down with any of those things. So that leaves us with a bunch of stuff, right? We're left with Dr. King wasn't happy with the mass white power culture. It's just simply what it is. And he was far more concerned about their reaction or what the consequences would have been on the lives of black people than he ever was worried about any of the discourse that we might have visited upon, you know, white people. He talked about how it can twist you. He talked about how it can hurt you. But he was concerned about his children. He was concerned about the people that every single day that he would minister to. And that was his concern. And it's a laudable. So in that, this person, you know, and I say the same thing about Malcolm, who I don't think you all know how brilliant these people were. I don't think I think that when you take Obama and you put, like, what's that thing in math when you put a 10, what's that called? Like the power or something when you put a 2 or a 10, what's it called?
Pi?
Hmm?
Is it pi you're talking about?
No, not pi, it's 3.14 something. But you know when you put a number after another number, like 10 to the power or something?
Yeah. Oh no, man, sorry.
Anyways, when you look at Obama, I'm going to tell you right now, exponential, thank you very much. So we just wanted you to do some work. Right? And then Emily writes exponential. So I'm going to let you know that both Dr. King and Brother Malcolm, Sojourner Truth, Harriet Tubman, were exponentially smarter to the power of 100 than this brilliance that you see in Obama. These were just master orators or advanced orators, skilled with being able to craft words, but they were skillful, guileful tacticians as well. Managers of resources, governors of people, thought leaders, and world-class architects of thought. Wow. It's amazing. What I want you to do, forget what you think you've heard. Don't even pay attention to necessarily what you're reading in books. Now, I'm not telling you not to read a book. I want you to go into YouTube tonight. Okay? Go into YouTube tonight. Pick any of Malcolm X's debates. Pick one at Harvard. That was pretty good, if you can get it. There's tons of them on there. Pick any of the dialogues or discussions that Dr. King had. You find me, I challenge you, I'll send you $20, PayPal. If you can find me a national leader that can hold a candle, and we'll all vote on it, to the things that these folks said in open session. Now, we're going to find academics. There's Michael Dyson, there's Bell Hooks, there's Joy DeGruy, there's Cornell, Professor West. But put them upside. Like, watch some of these clips and see what really is popping. Compare their words, Malcolm's words at any debates, or Martin's words in any debates, Dr. King's words in any debates, and hold them up against anybody else. No one. I can tell you. Like, just be honest with you. Come back and say, no, this national leader, who? JFK? Like, let's even compare them to leaders at this time. JFK? Don't even start on that guy. Nixon? Lyndon Johnson? Who? Jimmy Carter was a smart guy, but I've never heard him say anything the likes of this. Bill Clinton? George Bush? The trash heap that we're dealing with right now? Like who? Speaker of the House Pelosi? Ryan? Who? Herman Cain? Who? Hillary? Bernie? Cory? Kamala? Who? Find me a leader that can measure up. Right? And you're going to say Gandhi. Well, he also said some really sick stuff too as well. You're going to have to pull out the heavyweights like Gandhi, who hated black people, by the way, or Churchill, who also had disdain for black people, or Lincoln, who owned slaves, or Thomas Jefferson, who owned slaves and raped a black woman for 20 some odd years. You're going to have to go into that moral depravity in order to even scratch close to where these people are at. Okay? All right, new topic. We're going to hit this fast and light. Jordan Peele. I just watched the first 2 episodes of The Twilight Zone. Wow. I always thought The Twilight Zone was cool. And it's good to see it redone. I'm a big fan of Jordan Peele. This stuff is pretty good, but I'm a fan of Jordan Peele because he's clear about what he wants to do, and like I said earlier, he doesn't sit on the fence. He's an extremist. So what he said is, I've been in this industry for some time. I've watched everything. I'm not going to cast any more white leading people as leading men or women in my, or other genders in my work. I'm not going to do it. I've seen that movie before, right? And when I look at it today, we got Shazam. Say the word. Shazam. 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 We've got a message of a little boy. All he has to do is say one word. A little white boy says one word, Shazam, and he's got all the power that he ever needs. That's entitlement if I've ever smelled it. We've got Batman entitled, like, would he really be that tough if he didn't have all that gear that his daddy gave him from his inheritance? Iron Man, the same thing. Batman squared or duplicated. We have Superman, who basically didn't do anything to get his stuff. He was thrown in a rocket ship by his parents, who were rich scientists anyway and could afford a rocket ship, threw him into space. He landed on the planet, and to no credit of his own, in this world that's supposed to be called a democracy, he now has powers that are godlike. And we see the same thing with Wonder Woman. Now, I'll give some Wonder Woman some credit because she actually trained for 1,000 years on that island. Fair enough. But she still was born with these powers and probably would have kicked tail anyway. Right? Then we have Captain flying, glowing, super soldier, Jesus woman, Captain Marvel, who basically just stumbled into her powers by doing something she shouldn't have done in the first place. So what we have is this sense of entitlement that's predictable. We've seen them. We're addicted to. I watched all these movies. Slap me in the face, right? That's where we're at. Can't help it. But we've seen them. We know what's going to happen. I know what's going to happen in the next Avengers, right? Hopefully they'll bring back Shuri. Shuri! They might bring back Black Panther. I'm glad they didn't touch Okoye, right? So we know what's already going to happen. A bunch of white people are going to save another group of white people, and they're going to get together and say Avengers Assemble. And then a couple of us, because they're throwing us in this token, are going to go Wakanda forever. Great. And we're going to have our moment, and everything's going to be great. So Jordan Peele got sick of this. He's seen this before, right? He's seen this before. And he said, I'm not doing it. I'm telling different stories. Maybe some of them even the same stories. But they're going to be different because they're going to have black people. And we're going to give you the spectacle. We're going to give you the spectacle of black entertainment the way that it should be. Managed by black people, for black people, with black people. And you can watch it too as well. Right? And we hear this discourse. People getting upset. That's racist. That's so racist. How can you say, see, black people are guilty as racist? It's prejudice plus power. And Jordan Peele, I almost called him Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peele, because you have power and you're adding prejudice, you must be racist. What they're not saying is that as a storyteller, he wants to tell stories that he thinks are interesting and then haven't been told before and give other people opportunities. Right? What they never complained about was John Gray, Tim Burton, Woody Allen. Double standard. If Jordan Peele ever slept with a 13-year-old woman or young person who he had taken as his daughter in their house, they wouldn't not just give him budgets anymore, they'd give him a rope around his neck. Now, let's be clear about that. Never mind continuing allowed to make him to make movies. Woody Allen for years said, I'm not going to cast black people in his films. In fact, he said something more like, well, they're roles that have specific people, and, if the role fits, we got people like Matt Damon, the Bourne guy that all you folks love. Watch him and Affleck out of Boston there. Watch them, right? Ben Affleck talking about, the role must fit the person, and he'll go into links about that. He'll make a whole bunch of excuses for not casting black people, right? We have Tim Burton saying, well, it's just not realistic to cast the black people in some of these roles because they were really called for white people. This is a guy that made a movie. I'm just in shock. This is a guy that made a movie about someone that had scissors for hands. And he's talking about realism. You can make Edward Scissorhands, but you can't cast a black person in a movie because that's unrealistic. So here's what I'm going to do. Right? Here's what I'm going to do. Is I'm going to continue to support Jordan Peterson. I ain't going to support Woody Allen because his movies are whiteness incorporated anyway. And I've seen them. I watch everything because I have to. It's part of my commitment to you to keep vigilant on all things. So I'll watch I'll take the sacrifice and watch the next Avengers movie and stuff like that. But I'm not going to actually go, whenever I can, I'm not going to go and give my dollars towards it. So Shazam, I'm not going to go to the theater and support that. I'm going to pirate it and watch it at home. No, I'm not. Actually, I'm not going to do that. This is Facebook. Did I just say that? No, I'm not going to do that. So I'm going to watch it at home, and I'm going to chill, and that's how we're going to deal with these things. Right? But I'm going to go to Jordan Peele's movies.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Now, and I'm going to support him. Now, I did break down, and I have admission. I did go see.
Aquaman.
What was it?
Aquaman.
Yell it.
Aquaman.
Yeah.
It's okay though.
You think that's okay?
It's okay. I don't care.
And that was Whiteness Under the Sea. Right? They couldn't even throw. They had all these different tribes of people, and they had fish people, and they had bad fish people. They had good fish people, bad fish people.
The black people were the bad guys.
And the only two black people they could put in the movie weren't even people that could breathe underwater. They were bad guys. The only two real black people in the movie, and they were bad guys, and they couldn't even breathe underwater. All right. So, this is what we're dealing with this week. We're going to make these sessions a little bit shorter. We're going to try to get some AV stuff going here. We're going to try to get some clips. We're going to try to get you more involved. We're going to try to ask for folks to join me and have some discussion and debate. We're going to amp this up. You're going to see better production in some of the stuff we're doing. And I want you to get excited. I want you to challenge me. If I say something that's wrong, I want you to come at me full bore. Right? For every major issue, I'll send you a prize. If you can show me something that I've done wrong or said wrong or was incorrect, right? You'll get a prize. Right? Could be a bag of candy. Could be a t-shirt from our store. Conversations.shop. Check us out on www.conversationswith.net and check us out Conversations with White People on Facebook. I'm Icy Bailey. Stay extreme. Radically accept your discomfort. Fight the power.